Okay, so we're continuing ahead with our object creation. Okay, and let's add some center lines to our front view. So I'm going to go to the center layer. Okay, and then I will draw lines from here to here, and from here, and notice, remember, center lines show symmetry, and also notice how the line type is displayed. Okay, so we have some problems. Okay, center lines should extend beyond the visible edge, and depending on where you read or what object you're looking at, some texts say 1/8 of an inch beyond the visible edge, or 1/4 inch past the visible edge, and then some say it depends on the object, but all agree that it should be uniform. So for if you have a really large object, you may use extend beyond the visible edge a different distance. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to use 1/4 of an inch. Okay, because I know this is 5 units from here to here, and 1/4 inch will probably show the center line as it should be shown. So let's use the lengthen command, LEN, enter, and let's type DE, enter, and let's let the delta length be 0.25, enter. Okay, and then we'll go and we'll click on the center lines on the ends. Okay, now we have one more problem. Okay, this is something called the precedence of blinds. Okay, like basically which line type should be shown when you have two line types lying on top of one another. And our center line is currently laying on top of our visible line. The precedence of lines, the visible lines always take precedence. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to click on these two lines that are currently laying on top of the visible lines, right click, select draw order, and send it back. Okay, now it also sends it behind the construction lines, which is not that big a deal because we're going to turn them off, but we can actually send, remember we have in here we have 3 lines in the same place, so we have a visible construction line and a center line laying in the same place. So if I go back and redefine that all my construction lines are in the back, then you can see that our center line is between, so to say, our visible line and the construction line. Okay, and if you want to turn off your construction layer just to make sure, you can do that. Okay, alright, so let's just momentarily turn our construction layer back on, and let's create the center line that runs through the section view. And again, we'll have to use the lengthen command with a delta of 0.25. Okay, now let's turn off our construction layer. Now you will see that our center line is not really displaying as a center line right now. Okay, we're not going to worry about that for right now. Okay, but you can see that it is blue, which helps you differentiate between it and the other lines, and for model space that's really the most important part right now. Okay, so we're just going to leave that alone, and now let's create a couple of new layers. Okay, and your directions in Angel it said that we need a couple of new layers, and if you haven't already, now is the time to construct these. So we're going to create a layer called cutting, and the color should be magenta, and the line type should be dashed, and we could use a hidden line type. I can't remember. Let's go to load and see if there is a dashed. Yes, there's a dashed line type. Okay, so we want to select that, and so after you load it, you can just click OK, but then you have to actually assign it to the layer. Okay, alright, so and the line weight for this layer should be 0.60. Okay, this is what's required for a cutting plane line. Okay, you can go back to your alphabet of lines. I believe it's around page 29 in the technical drawing with engineering graphics text by Gasecki. Okay, so that that's defined as it should be. Now let's create one more layer. This is for our section lining. We'll call it section. And let's make it blue, the dark blue. And the line type should be continuous. And we'll let the line weight be default. Okay. So now let's switch over to our layout. And let's get our drawing centered in our viewport. And let's find a scale that works for this object. Let's try 1:1. Okay. Pretty large, but the thing is that we are not dimensioning this object, so this would probably be fine. If we were adding dimensions, we would really want to go down a scale to 1:2. Okay, but in this case, I think 1:1's okay. It's a little larger than I would like, but we want to use the standard scales that are in the drop-down list. And let's lock our viewport. All right, now. What we need to do is create our cutting plane line. And there's no easy way to do this, but you want to make sure that you're out of, like right now, you can see that my viewport is bold, which means that if I were to start drawing right now, it would show up in model space. I don't want that. So I want to double click outside the viewport to make sure that I have not activated it. And you can double check that by making sure that you have paper showing down here. Okay. So the cutting plane line, the arrowheads, they actually have a specific size that they need to be created. And the reason that we're creating this in paper space is due to viewport scaling. Now, we're actually using a 1:1 viewport scale, so the viewport would be okay. Or the size of the arrow would be okay even if we drew it in model space, but I want you to get in the habit of drawing these cutting plane lines in paper space so the viewport scale does not affect the way that the cutting plane line appears. Okay, so let's go to our cutting layer that we created. Now, I'm actually looking at page 250 in your Technical Drawing with Engineering Graphics text by Gasecki, and it actually defines the size of the arrowhead there, but I've already worked out this math, and so the length of our arrowhead should be 0.175, and the broadest part of the arrowhead should have a width of 0.1. Okay, so I may have introduced polylines in previous videos, but I'm going to use it again because polylines. Poly means many lines. Okay, it connects many lines together, but more important than that is you can assign properties to polylines that you cannot assign to regular line types. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the shortcut command for polyline. It's PL and then enter. It's also on the draw panel of the home tab. Okay, so PL, enter. All right, so I'm going to go approximately in this area. Okay, look where the midpoint of our drawing is. That's where our cutting plane line will pass through, but we have to accommodate for an arrowhead. Okay, so I'm going to go about right here, okay, which is about the midpoint between here and the midpoint of the object. So just a little bit above that is where I'm going to start my arrowhead. And notice the approximate distance from the object edge. Okay, we're not going to get down to rocket science here, but I'm going to click right now. Okay, and I have my polar tracking turned on. All right, so down on the command line, AutoCAD is asking me to specify my next point. But what I want to do is to define a width. Okay, so I'm going to click on width. You can also just press W and then enter, but I'm going to click width. And it asks me to specify starting width. Okay, my starting width is where I am now. All right, so 0 is fine. So I'm just going to type 0 and then enter. My ending width, however, is going to be the widest point on my arrowhead. Okay, so I want to type in 0.1. Okay, and you can see that if I zoom in, that AutoCAD is trying to create an arrow. Okay, it's based on the parameters that I just defined. Now, according to the math that I just spoke about for how to create this arrowhead properly, the length of the arrowhead should be 0.175. Okay, so while I have my crosshairs pulling to the